Yeah. There we go. Look, I've got a special treat. We can, as we get going today.
Oh,
we've got
cool vibe.
As we set up.
It must be summer.
It must be summer. Let's do that. Get that out of the way so we have some nice synchronization. I was like, we never play any music. I'm like,
we don't.
And we have the ability and the licensing to be able to do that. Because anyway.
Very nice.
Today, I think is super fun. It's summer.
It is,
and,
yes. So a little chill, a little shorter.
Yeah, and I thought, we were talking about this earlier. I'm like, it's summertime, so whether you're, heading to the beach, to a new travel destination, the backyard, whatever it is, I'm like, summertime is a good time for like a summer reading list of some kind. And I was like,
and I like the way as you see that you're eyeing my list, my stack of books. There, thinking, what?
So. Well, also, like, I haven't looked.
We have no idea what each other are gonna.
We went off and we're like, okay. And funny thing, I think right off the bat, is that you brought a stack of actual books.
Yes.
I just have a list.
Right.
Which is really,
but
very
it's because
telling.
you actually listen to a lot of your books as well as I do use Kindle.
I do.
Yes.
Predominantly I use Audible.
Mm-hmm.
So I should right off the bat, nobody is sponsoring anything from, but I started using, I was a Kindle reader for a long time and then was like, and as a kid, I used to do a lot of audiobooks, but these were like books on tape, then books on CD. I remember these big plastic binders that would have like 14 tapes in them. And then I listened to books on CD, same kind of thing, like on road trips and in the car, and then kind of just completely got away from that. And then eventually was getting to the point where every time, I used to read all the time at night, and there's probably a lot of people who can sympathize with the number of times that device has whacked me in the face as I'm sort of losing.
Because you're lying there and holding it.
You're lying in bed, holding and the Kindles, they don't weigh anything.
No.
But I'd be holding it.
But people have got the iPhone scar where they sort of dropped it and smack.
Or the worst, the iPad. You got it's just like, oh, geez. It just bops you in the face. But I was having the trouble where I was like, I just couldn't stay awake anymore. So I'd get I'm like, all right, finally, I get to dive in, and then you're like, So I switched to audiobooks. I went back and joined Audible, went back and started audiobooks. And if it's not for work stuff, like for just pleasure, I massively. And
I know a lot of people that do that. I can't, but it's definitely a thing that a lot of my colleagues do.
No, it's crazy.
Okay, so you've got the stuff in your head or on your computer. I've got the real paper stuff here.
Yep.
Although I do use Kindle a lot, I must confess.
Yes.
And it's partially that middle of the night thing.
Yep. Yeah, but you still read with your eyes, not your ears.
I still read with my eyes.
Have you? When's the last time have you done an audiobook?
Oh, it's a long time since I've last listened. Yeah.
Well, I will. So I'll put this plug out there, and then we'll take a quick pause and we'll start the show formally. But one of the things about audiobooks that I really enjoy, I feel like I've mentioned this a lot, but I am a very auditory person, and one of the things that's always interesting for me, like I can remember with certain parts of books, for example, like where I was when I was listening to the first time. So I have these really fond, nostalgic memories of this as well, of like being at a train station, waiting for, listening and having these parts come up. And then when you revisit those parts, you're like, oh, right, I know exactly where I was, what I was doing.
It has that association.
But otherwise, there's a danger with audiobooks, and that's, of course, the narrator.
Yes.
Right. You can have a wonderful book made inaccessible by a bad narrator. I can imagine, right? Or sometimes someone's voice can be grating on you, or just the way, also the reverse. You can have, and I know I've done it myself, and I know others who do this as well, who like a narrator so much that they'll seek the books based on who that narrator is reading.
That I can imagine. So both my books are available as audiobooks, and going through the process with the publisher, I listen to samples of the narrators to make sure that they actually matched.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful way of getting that, and then there's like this new layer, which is a little bit more, I think a lot of times they refer to them as like enhanced books.
Okay.
But, which is not the same thing as like a dramatized version, but enhanced book will have like subtle sound effects in there. So like nothing dramatic, or at least good ones. I feel like ones that are done well don't have like obvious sound effects in them. But they're just these subtle background noises or.
So, it's beginning really to remind me. So when I used to be in the UK, I used to travel quite a lot. And there's a radio station in the UK that British listeners will know well, Radio 4, that used to do sort of radio plays and sort of narrations and things. And I remember being in the car listening to those. And again, there's something special about a radio play because the subtle sounds just position it completely.
Yeah. Well, and that was not at all our topic today.
I know,
but there's something, there is in many ways a lost art form of the audio play,
right?
Which was, before television, that was the most interactive storytelling.
Yep.
Which I've got a couple that are former radio plays too that I think are worth going back. But there was such a lost today. I feel like there's such a lost art form.
So you need to go back to the UK. I'm pretty sure that
they're still doing Well, and even now, on Audible, I know they've recreated some like podcast style audio stories, and there are some good ones out there that have kind of brought back that radio play method. But and also cool. Some of them are available on like archive.org where you can listen to these old old serials like Flash Gordon and these like super old these. But yeah, they're really fun. In fact, I used to use those when I would in teaching. I would teach undergrads like how to do podcasting and narrative storytelling. One of the things, it's like one of those things where you provide some pathways and some constraints, but was like, here's a script from a radio play from like 1915 or something like that. And it was like, take it and now you're going to do your own spin on it.
Yes.
And it's so much fun, like just pulling those things back. So a lot of love for those old radio plays.
We could go a long time with that, but I do notice the plan was to make this short and sweet, minimal cold open. We're already at 7 minutes here, so we should.
I played music. I feel like I bought some good. I bought some good spirit with that for playing. But we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll get into our reading list.
Yes,
sounds good. All right. Well, I'm Sean Leahy, joined with
Andrew Maynard.
And that makes this Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like what will it mean to be human in the future? And today, as we were mentioning, today is a fun summer reading list.
Yes.
Summer reading list day, summer day. I don't know. Summer vibes, reading
summer
vibes. I don't know. Yes. Take it for what you want. We both went away. We came back with some
and we did not confer.
Picks. No, not at all. So I'm really curious. I can see
right.
I have an advantage. I can see yours, which also instantaneously makes me self-conscious about my choices.
So the funny thing coming into this, I must confess, I always feel guilty about my reading. I feel as a professor and as an academic, I should be reading sort of big, weighty, sort of nonfiction tomes.
Yeah.
I hate reading nonfiction.
Oh, okay. I feel better now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I love fiction.
Yeah,
and I love it just for the immersiveness of it. But actually, I find that it stimulates my creativity and imagination. It's a perfect complement to the sort of deep analytical stuff that I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Andrew, because I am very much the same way. So I've always, the reading, this is a giveaway right now. Everything on my list is fiction.
Perfect. I don't feel so bad now. I was feeling really bad. I was thinking you were going to have some really weighty tomes in.
Now, if you were hoping to tune in for like the intellectual hour, this ain't it.
Right. Yes.
But for me, and I explain this to friends and families also because, I'm surrounded by people who love nonfiction books or historical nonfiction. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't. Well, and maybe it's part of it as faculty, right? Like we read nonfiction all day long.
That's it. That's the day job. And I need something to sort of allow me to sort of spark curiosity and imagination around that and actually delve into areas that are sort of more creative.
Yeah. And for me, that's it too. When I read for entertainment or for whatever, like I really like just like, it's an escapism too of like, I want to go read something interesting. But with my picks, I will say, and we can kind of talk back and forth on these, but I've picked stuff that one, I enjoy and I think would be fun to read, but also because they would work well in balance between other more serious things or whatever. What I like, and I don't know if this resonates with you as well in terms of like the readings that you do for fun, for personal enjoyment, is that back and forth between the hard stuff we read and the fiction that we read, the combination of those play really well
I agree.
off each other. And maybe that's a tell of people who are engaged in futures and future technologies and stuff. I mean, this is kind of our thing, I guess.
Right, yes. Okay, with that, we ought to find out what's on our list.
Do you want to go first or should I?
Why don't you go first?
Okay, so I split my list. Well, here, I split my list and you flip the coin and tell me where to start. I split my list into books that have some TV or film adaptation, and other ones that basically either don't or they're not that prominent.
Okay, I'm already second guessing what's on your list. Let's start with the TV or film adaptation.
Okay, so we've already, one is this, I'll just give this away because we already talked about it before, which is the Murderbot Diaries. We talked about this last.
Yep.
Super fun. There's 7 books in total. That's fun. So that's an easy giveaway.
Yep.
The other one I will mention that has a TV or series or movie on it is the Silo series.
I was expecting that because we've talked a lot about
talked about so so the Silo series is a series. It's actually a series of 3 books, none of which are called Silo.
Right.
There's a confusion there. The TV show on Apple TV Plus is called Silo, but the original 3 books are by author Hugh Howey. The first book is one everyone should start with. It's called Wool, followed by Shift, and then Dust.
Okay.
And so if you have seen the Apple TV Plus show, which now has 2 seasons, that is all still encapsulated in that first novel of Wool.
Right. Yep.
And what I like about this story is, again, this is one of those sort of post-apocalyptic dystopia style of stories.
Right.
But it's really, the concept here is that humanity, as you see it, is basically living in these vertical silos because the world has gone to pots or whatever. And then these whole sort of things sort of unfold, and there's a lot of mystery and intrigue built on top of these pieces. And the whole time, again, we come back to my love of the mystery box.
Right.
The whole show is constructed around this mystery box of why the hell are they in this silo?
Yep. So
is it really dangerous? You're constantly questioning and you're thinking. And there's this really cool element. I may have mentioned before my enjoyment of the Fallout video game franchise that has also been turned into a TV series.
Yep.
But I really enjoy this mix of this futuristic dystopia, utopia, protopia, whatever.
Yep.
But there's mix of this like vintage, like post like 1950s technology.
So you get that vibe.
And so there's this really interesting vibe of working with old technology. Like, this doesn't give any spoilers away, but for example, they're trying to reconstruct like hard drives and video cameras as way of, it's really interesting. The 3-book series, if you read the first book, you'll know right away if this series is for you.
Right.
And I will say, as someone who enjoys the mystery box, but also likes resolution, is the 3 books that are there are set up in a way where it's like, the second book takes a big step backwards and shows you how this all happened.
Right, okay, yes.
And then the third book picks up where the first book left off and finishes the story.
Okay.
And I feel, as a reader, very satisfied with the way it comes to a conclusion.
Yes. So, no, that sounds great. And then, of course, going back to the Murderbot books, I mean, those are beautiful, light summer reading.
They are.
They're fun, they're enjoyable, they give you a different perspective, they're unexpected.
Yep, they're real fun. And there's 5 novellas and 2 like longer form. And to put it in audio format, those novellas are like 2.5 hours to listen to.
So now this actually might convince me to
road trippable, airplaneable. They're a nice and now the nice thing about this too is because I know a lot of people, there's a constant friction between the book and the movie or the adaptation or whatever. Always the book will blow your mind compared, but sometimes people need that, like, I saw it, I'm interested. Now you can go. You can go.
And I'm not a purist when it comes to adaptations. I think they've got their own place, and I acknowledge that different people have different expectations.
Yeah, and one of the books
I
have on here has I think more people are probably familiar with its film adaptation than the book.
Okay. So, interesting.
That'll be interesting.
Okay. 2 great starts.
All right. So off to you. Let's see.
Very
what's
different.
One of yours?
So this is one of my favorite books at the moment. I actually read it last year. Julie Schumacher, who's actually she's a professor of creative writing. And she's written this trilogy of books that are really about academia, and they are the sharpest, wittiest, most uncomfortable books I've read in a long time. So this is the first one in the series, Dear Committee Members. It is part of the Shakespeare trilogy, and it's basically it's a series of letters, but they're recommendation letters. So you've got this gnarly professor who is constantly being asked to write these letters of recommendation for his students, but he inserts insert himself into them.
Okay.
And so he'll be sort of writing this formal letter, and he'll say, yeah.
This is the advantage of actually bringing one in.
It is just so beautiful, because he'll be writing this letter and say, I've had a really lousy day today, and let's be honest, this student is really not up to this. I'm just writing this because I had to. But this whole story, this beautiful, tender, gnarly story sort of revolves through these letters. So the first book is fantastic. That's what got me hooked on them.
Yeah.
And as an academic, you can see yourself in this.
Well, I've known of this, but I haven't actually read it. But even just thumbing through it, one thing I like is how short. I mean, it's just this compendium of.
It is.
Which is also nice because, again, in these I would say this is a great first pick for a summer reading list too. When you're like, I've got 20 minutes.
See, that's right. Yes,
I've got an hour or whatever. You can pick it up. You can
and Schumacher writes beautifully. I mean, it is the sort of book that there's no pretentiousness to the writing.
Oh, fantastic!
It's just buttery smooth and clever and enticing. So you don't have to try hard at it, but you can really appreciate the beauty of the writing.
Yeah, very good. And then, I mean, from music, smart as hell and fun as heck novel.
Yes, yeah. And I would say once you get started on these, it's very hard to sort of give up. But you get to the third one, which is all about this professor's experience of taking a bunch of students to London on a study abroad experience.
Oh my goodness.
And it is so painfully real.
So painfully accurate to that experience. You're like, oh my God.
It is quite wonderful.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's a good choice.
Yes. So that's my number one.
And maybe it goes without saying, but I'll be blunt about it. We'll put the links for every one of these books in the show notes. So if you're like, which one was that again? You can jump to and grab it. Okay, so back to me here. Let's see. Ooh, all right. I'm gonna go with one. This is another one that has film adaptations to it, but the film adaptations do nothing. I feel like they just don't even come close to the book. And then as it's a science fiction book that let me think how to say this accurately. Basically creeped me out.
Okay.
Right? In a fun way.
Yep.
And then it's Solaris.
Oh, right. Yes. So I've seen the film. I haven't
Which film? There's two.
Oh,
there's one.
Me.
There's the 2002 version that has, I think it's George Clooney.
Right.
Is in it.
Yes.
And then there's a 1972 version, which I have not seen.
No,
the 1972.
It was the later one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the movie, as a sort of Hollywood, movie
it was okay.
You watch it and you're like, that's an interesting story. But like the book, this is one of those things where for me, it was very refreshing to me. And again, this is not a book. It was originally published in 1961.
Okay.
By Polish writer Stanislaw Lem.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's also been translated. So I think, it was originally written, I think Russian, I believe, was the original print language of it, but it's been translated and translated again, and there's I forget whatever it is, the most recent translation of it, just absolutely fantastically compelling. And basically, here's the premise, right? It follows a crew of scientists on a space station research facility. So it takes place in the future where we've interstellar travel, and basically these research scientists on this space station observatory platform have discovered what they believe is an extraterrestrial intelligence coming from this planet, but they can't quite figure it all out. And basically weird things start happening, right? So it's always like ... But what's fascinating about the book is it approaches one extraterrestrial life in I think a very refreshing way.
Right.
I'm not gonna give anything away, but it's not little green men, whatever.
Yes,
In fact, I would say it's very, I'm trying to think of any other, I can't think off the top of my head anyway of any other sci-fi who have presented alien intelligence in this way. But what's compelling about it is how visceral the imagery is about being on this isolation, being on this space. So imagine you're this, the main character kind of shows up to the space station and go, what the hell happened? And things just get creepy and weird.
Right.
I don't want to get too much, but it's this fascinating because it also it's a psychological thriller in that way to me as you read this thing, and you start second guessing all these things because you're living this sort of in the first person essentially through the scientist who's like starts to question their own sanity, then you as the reader are trying to figure it out. Of putting all this together, of like what on earth is happening?
But of course, I love that. It ties in beautifully with my next book. That idea of science fiction being you take a person in a situation and you put something unexpected in there, and you just see how things play out.
Yep, absolutely. And it's really fun. It's just a fun story, and it makes you question and think. And for me, tell of a lot of the books that I've chosen, these are all books that when you're done with them, you're just like, it stays with you.
Sure.
It lingers.
It's got those thought processes going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm glad you went back to the 1970s.
Okay.
I'm actually going to go further back than that with a couple of them. And I was a little worried that these aren't contemporary books. But my next one is by one of my favorite authors, who is a British science fiction author, John Wyndham.
Oh, yeah.
Who was writing in the sort of 50s and the 60s, and actually sort of before that under a different name. And I was wondering which one to choose here. But before I sort of reveal that, he's an interesting author because I would put him at least on a par, if not above, authors like Asimov and Heinlein and Clarke at the time.
Sure.
And it's because he writes social novels. So
that's a powerful list to be up there with, right?
I know, but sort of where someone like Asimov really looks at the technology, Wyndham looks at society. He looks at ordinary people, and he says, what if something extraordinary happened to these ordinary people with ordinary
I like that
lives?
premise.
Yes, yeah. And so even though some of them are a little dated, I think they're still very, very powerful. So the one I chose was the Kraken Wakes, which is, the premise is very interesting. It's the idea that there is this extraterrestrial life, possibly it might be something that isn't extraterrestrial, coming up out of the deeps of the ocean from the big trenches. But it plays out through the eyes of these reporters who begin to sort of see these seemingly disconnected events happening around the world. And they start to investigate it.
That's cool.
And it begins slowly to sort of be clear that these things are actually sort of part of something that's interconnected. Nobody really understands it.
Yeah.
And so then you look at society's response to this threat. And of course, everything plays out as you would expect, with sort of military responses, with denial, with all sorts of things. But it's just so beautifully written.
That's so. What's the time frame on this?
In terms of when it was set, it's contemporary from when it was written, and this was published 1953.
Okay, because I mean, when I have not read this particular one, but one I love because then you can obviously insert the "release the Kraken" kind of thing, right?
Yes, of course that's where it comes.
But
from,
also, it's interesting too because just hearing you describe that, I'm like, that almost sounds like Godzilla. But
incredibly subtle. So whereas Godzilla is sort of obviously big, sort of fantastical, this is deeply sort of grounded in reality. This is not fantasy at all. This is how it might conceivably play out.
Oh, that's cool.
And he just writes beautifully. And you can still get this. I mean, it's sort of 1950s, but you go on Amazon
I love it.
and you can find it. I would, all of his, I'm going to write about this at one point because all of his.
Well, I know
you're
a fan. We've talked about it quite a bit before.
His novels have so much to say about society and technology today.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And I will say, I will give away, I did not bring any H.G. Wells. I feel like I've already done that.
Right. Yes. So you didn't go that far.
I didn't go any, I don't have anything from the 1800s. I don't have that. Okay. Let's see. So I'll go with another older one.
Yep.
This one is a pick for us. Well, I think it's just a fun read no matter what, but also if you have kids, I think this is a good one to read that you can read with kids that are of middle elementary age and above and stuff like that, is A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
By Madeline Lang.
Yes.
1962. If you don't know, and it has been turned into a movie, which I saw 15 minutes of it, and it was this hurt. It hurt for me to watch it.
Work, yes,
but I mean, essentially, if you're not familiar, Wrinkle in Time is a young adult science fantasy. 1962 basically goes on this fantastical story of these people, and that you get to intertwine with all kinds of cool things like a tesseract and all kinds of just amazingly fun quest essentially. But there's all sorts of family themes in there. I think this is one of the books that probably got me most excited about just like the possibility space.
Interesting. So I've never read it. I'm now going to have to pick up a copy.
Oh yeah. I mean the basic premise is essentially the main character, Meg, her father goes missing, who's a scientist, and kind of just disappears. And of course, as they start to uncover like what happened, they're taken on this fantastical journey through space and time, basically.
Yes.
Getting glimpses, and then you pull in these things like the glimpses between like the battle between light and dark, and just really, really cool metaphors in there.
And of course, I love the fact that you've brought in young adult fiction because to my mind, a good book is a good book.
Yeah.
And there is some absolutely amazing young adult fiction that's written that you can read at any age and you can pull insights out of it.
Yeah.
And I really dislike sort of people who sort of say a book is for a certain age group and not beyond.
No, I think Wrinkle in, I mean, it's one of those fantastic books that like, I mean, I first came into it in elementary school, loved it, and then have returned to it as an adult and now with my own kids.
Yeah.
And there's just something to be, it's just, I think there's a total of 4 books in the series in total.
Yep.
But that first one is just an awe-inspiring tale, especially because you can enjoy it because the language is there and the story is there for younger audiences to engage in it.
Yes.
And it's a phenomenal book.
Yeah, yeah.
So
again, you're making me feel really good because my next book is also a kid's book.
Oh, good.
This is going even older. So this is Arthur Ransom's Swallowdale.
Oh.
So I've got to ask, are you familiar with Arthur?
I am not.
Okay,
this is
so
totally
he was a British author writing in I think the 1930s. This was first published in 1931.
Oh.
So quite a ways ago. So there's a whole series of books that are just beautiful. The first one, which is Swallows and Amazons, which more people will have heard of, it's about this family that goes up to the Lake District in the UK for vacation. Their father is in the Navy, so they're into the sailing, and they meet up with another couple of local kids, and they have adventures. And this is the second book in the series, which I've just finished reading, which is why it's here. And this is sort of an old original version.
What a beautiful book, too.
I know. So there's a history here as well. So there's when we go back to the UK each year.
I love this. Oh, I'm going to hold this up to the cameras to see. This is something I absolutely adore. I mean, obviously, the Lord of the Rings books were notorious.
Yeah.
Having
the hand-drawn maps
or other contextually relevant illustrations in the inside the cover. What a beautiful book.
It is, yeah. So I pick up these when we go over to the UK to where my wife's mother lives in Norwich. There's a beautiful little secondhand bookshop. And every year I've now got into the habit of seeking one of these out and bringing it back. But what I love about this is you look at the characters and the resourcefulness is incredible. I mean, it's easy to look at these as sort of an old sort of English privileged group of kids, but actually they're not. The whole books are based around them sort of identifying problems, and they're actually very minor problems most of the time, but using their resourcefulness to address them and fix them, while demonstrating a deep level of curiosity.
Yeah.
So when I was reading this,
that.
I was thinking, this is what my childhood was like. This is what it should be like to be a child that is able to really flex and express your curiosity, and having the permission to experiment and do things that maybe aren't that safe, but you actually sort of learn and you develop and grow from them. So it's beautifully written in that respect, but also it shatters any sort of sense that you might have in terms of hierarchy, in terms of either genders or sort of place in society. So the characters, they're all youngish kids, but there's a mixture of boys and girls. And the dynamic between them is absolutely not one of the boys being dominant. In fact, actually, I'd say the girls, the women in this are the stronger characters.
Fantastic.
So highly recommended.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful read. It's an easy read, deeply relevant to how we think about society today, especially in the noisiness of today's electronic society. And it gets back to this basic thing of imagination, creativity, curiosity, and problem solving.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I'll have to check that one out because I think that'd be fun. And I mean, I will say not on my list is any of the Tolkien books, right? But because I'm like, everyone knows that. But all right, help me decide here: movie adaptation, book, or something just kind of for fun.
Something for fun.
Okay, I think I've told you about this book because I think this is one of those book series that I don't think is as popular as it should be.
Yep.
And it's one of those things, if you enjoy it, you ask everyone you know if they've read it to see. And that is the Bobaverse series.
And I have.
Okay.
Yes.
So Dennis E. Taylor, also known, the original book, also known as We Are Legion.
Yes.
Which is relatively, I mean, I looked up the dates because I was like, when was the first one? But so it's 2016 up to the most recent, the fifth book, the most recent book just came out last fall. So in 2024. But so you're familiar. You read it.
I have, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Are you a fan? I love it.
On the fence. Yeah.
So what I love the most about it is just a fun.
Right. It is.
Like for me, the Bobaverse series, which for people who aren't familiar, is basically the premise is you have this like wealthy sort of like tech engineer type, right? Silicon Valley type who, you know, is vastly wealthy and decides I'm going to do the due diligence to cryogenically freeze my head and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then before, like, it's like page 2 whack, you know, right out. I think he might even be coming out of the facility or something and gets hit by a truck or something. But then wakes up 117 years later as part of this von Neumann probe. Like his consciousness has been uploaded in terms of like the singularity. He is now an artificial intelligence sent out to explore the cosmos. And all kinds of cool stuff. Basically, all kinds of cool stuff kind of happens after that. And I find this book, this series, to just be a fun ride.
Right. It is. But it also explores some really sort of big ideas.
It does.
And the fact, I think this is not giving anything away, that the idea that he replicates himself. Yes. So now you have this universe of Bobs.
That's exactly it, right? And so you get, and then what's funny though too is again, there's so many of these different elements kind of weaved in there too, because what's interesting to follow this story over its 5 book sort of arc is that not only does it replicate, but then you start to get the sort of the randomness of that replication. Right, it's not always perfect. Yep. And then you have this like all the way towards, without giving anything away, you start to get like factions of Bobs that may have opposite ideas as the OG Bobs. And so it's just this interesting, but then also the way that they explore other planets and the ability to like vicariously through these mechanisms interact with alien species.
And of course, the critical part of this, and this is the conceit that allows you to explore the universe, is if you're an artificial entity, the speed of light doesn't matter. In some ways, it does in others. But if you can put yourself to sleep and travel for hundreds of years to another planet and then wake up, which you can do if you're a digital entity, it changes everything.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating too, because they explore the options of, the communications in VR. So there's like these AI, it's fascinating, but also to me, one of the interesting things is it sort of gets, without directly talking about it, it gets around this idea too of some of just like the questions around, for example, like the Fermi paradox, right?
Of course, yes.
Like if the world, if the universe is teeming with life, why can't we find it? And honestly, raising one of these questions where perhaps it's most likely if we were to ever discover extraterrestrial intelligence or something of that nature, that it might be artificial in this manifestation because unlike a fleshy, squishy thing that needs calories to survive, right? This technology might be able to, especially if it can replicate, would long surpass any biological organism. So it's really, it's just a fun ride. I really enjoy it.
So that actually segues nicely into my 4th book, which is actually a bit of a cheat because it's half fiction, half nonfiction.
That's okay.
So this is
I have one like
this is a book that came out a few years ago now, AI 2041.
All right.
Have you come across this?
I know of it, but I haven't actually read it. So I'm curious to hear.
It's written by Kai-Fu Lee, who was former head of Google in China, so a scientist, and then Chen Qifan, who is a science fiction writer, Chinese science fiction writer. And basically, together, they were trying to imagine what artificial intelligence looks like a couple of decades from now. So it's an interleaving of short stories, science fiction stories, with a response to that or a framing of that around sort of science reality and technology reality. And as a result of that, and I suspect sort of if I went back to this, I'd feel this feels a little dated now, even though it's a few years old. I love that combination of reality and science fiction because you have got that grounding, but it allows you to extend your thinking and your creativity about where technology might go. Because of course, as we know, the future isn't fixed. It's one of the things that we can't predict, but we can extend and expand our imagination to imagine possible pathways forward.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I enjoy that one.
Yes,
I need to read that. It's my list is getting longer too because I've read all mine, so this is perfect for me.
Add that one to it. Yes, and that one is a bit of a big bulky one. It's maybe half of it is for sort of reading at the beach, and then you skip over the factual stuff and come back.
See, that's one of the ones too. Like a book like that, you're like, I need to see who narrates that because you know what I mean. That's gonna make or break.
I know. Yes, gonna have to check out the audio.
Gonna make it break it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go to one that's a little far out. Okay. It's a little fun. Again, this is a fun read. Have you come across Old Man's War?
No.
Before, by John Scalzi.
I know Scalzi, but I haven't read that.
Yeah. You just throw a dart and you'll hit a book he's written.
Yeah.
There's so many. So Old Man's War, originally published in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, the premise of this was very intriguing. The book itself, very fun read. It's very approachable. The human emotion in there is cool.
Yep.
But also, so the premise here is it starts, so I'll read this bit because I think it's kind of fun. John Perry, the main character, did two things on his 75th birthday. He visited his wife's grave, then he joined the army.
Okay.
So it takes place essentially in this somewhat nearish future.
Yep.
Where essentially the bulk of humanity's resources is out exploring interplanetary, intersolar system space and things like that, realizing we're not the only ones looking for other habitable zones.
Right.
So there's conflict galore,
Yep.
And which is where you sort of enter in the colonial defense force, right? But the trick here is that everybody knows that when you reach retirement age, you can join the army, basically. So the way this works is that, so this is all built on this premise that you live your life until you reach the ripe old age of, I think it's 65 in the book is when they give their DNA sample. And then when they reach retirement age, they say, it's time to go to the army. And they show up and they are transported and basically awoken at their destination, having had their mind and consciousness been implanted into a clone of themselves.
Oh, wow, right, yes.
But not just a clone of their younger self, a enhanced humanoid combat clone.
Right, okay.
And so what happens then is it's an interesting premise where then you have these old souls, or or they call themselves, this group, they refer to themselves as old farts.
Okay.
In young bodies that have been genetically enhanced for combat.
Okay.
And then the book is just this brutal, bloody thing because what it does is in a space, what I really enjoyed about it is when you take a space where you can move past the mortality of the corpus of your body, right? Where you can move your consciousness and mind, to these clones, suddenly how dispensable your current form is. Yes. And it is quite that in this. But then also there's interesting tales, and I won't give anything away. This is also another series as well. But you start to run across people where you're like, did we know each other in our old original life now, hundreds and hundreds of years ago?
Right.
So it's interesting premise and all this kind of stuff.
But again, that idea of sort of coming up with a sort of premise and framework and then letting it run, saying, well, what happens to the people here?
It's crazy. And when you think about it, you're like, oh, well, if you could just throw, it's interesting. So that and then it's cool because it sets up all these, all the different ways that conflict can be explored in these narratives, right?
Very nice.
But it's a fun read. And again, if you enjoy it, there's a series. So you can keep that going and kind of follow along with good old John Perry there as he progresses from whatever, the lonely private all the way up to some senior ranking member in the colonial defense force.
Lovely, yes. Which actually ties in quite nicely with my last book, which is probably one of my top favorite authors. So this is Ian M. Banks, Scottish author. And for those who don't know, he used to write under Ian Banks when it was just regular fiction novels, and Ian M. Banks with his science fiction.
Yes.
Very well known for his Culture series of science fiction, but this actually isn't in it. So this is, I chose The Algebraist.
Okay.
Which is one of his few sci-fi books, which is not in the Culture universe, or if it is, you don't see that intersection.
Interesting. Yeah, because I'm familiar with the Culture series, that world.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I don't know this one.
This I think is probably one of my favorites of his books at the moment. It's too complex to sort of really give a feeling for. But the premise is it's in this universe where there have been all sorts of things that have happened over the millennia with AI. So now this is a universe where artificial intelligence, certainly by humanoids, is considered to be sort of banned. AI is not allowed to exist in society. And so that's part of the premise. And you actually have these sort of factions that hunt down AI, and that's all part of it.
Yep.
But there are so many different strands to this. Strands that I think go very, very deep into the nature of what it means to be human and the nature of what it means to be human within a vibrant, flourishing society.
Yep.
Also, but the nature of what it means to have personhood and not be human. So, for instance, some of the characters here are characters called the Dwellers, that living gas giants, and they have a very, very different sense of time. So we're now living in a sort of future sort of galaxy where these are such an ancient species that they've decided that really the only point in living is to sort of live your personal life to the full and have fun. And as a result, sort of all the other species around them think that, they're absolute losers. They're not even sure that they're sentient.
They don't even care.
I know. But of course, it turns out that they're incredibly powerful. And one of the narratives is that over millennia, species that have dissed the Dwellers somehow don't seem to do that well.
They seem to fall away.
Which I absolutely love. So
that's cool.
There are multiple strands through here, and it challenges your idea of personhood, of humanity, of the universe, of artificial intelligence, and it is just deliciously written. I mean, some of the twists are just so wonderful.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, no, I love this. And of course, this is a special one. I didn't meet him, but this is actually, it's an Ian
very
Banks
cool.
Signed copy. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so one of my
and I will, in the show notes, I will sneak in a bonus with the Ian M. Banks because, which I first discovered across, it's a book that you have that I thumbed through, is all of his
his drawings from when he was a kid. Yes.
If you are a fan of like precision draft, like spaceships and all the I mean, for me, it's the same thing with like the Tolkien stuff, the world building.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful book of all of these drawings that he has done of all of they look like schematic blueprints almost,
they
right?
really do. You can see sort of where his mind was coming from. And I think that adds to the depth of it. So I mean, as an author, one of the reasons I love him is he's a deeply flawed author. He is not perfect in any sense whatsoever, which is also why I suspect that he's polarizing.
Sure.
But because of that, I identify with him even more.
Yeah.
And you've got this amazing world building. You've got a deep grasp of physics. So yes, of course, he breaks laws of physics, but he does it in a self-consistent way. But where necessary,
you're allowed to do that.
He demonstrates an understanding of what is plausible versus what is complete fantasy.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which I don't think people always realize, is he had aspirations to be a poet. He's a poet.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And it comes through in his writing. He is one of the most poetic science fiction writers I know about.
Yeah.
To the extent, I mean, I'm going to lose half our audience here, but you read someone like Asimov.
Sure.
Great ideas. I would say not a great writer.
Those are hard. Those are hard books. Those are books you really have to, they're a commitment.
You focus on the ideas and the technology, and you have to forgive some of the writing, which is a bit clunky.
I mean, especially like Foundation. I mean, some of these things, I mean, they're great when you're done reading it, to think about it.
Right.
But they're hard. Those are hard books to get through.
Banks is a novelist.
Yeah.
The way he uses language and crafts it is beautiful.
Yeah. And that's what you want, especially for a summertime reading list.
Right.
You gotta have that, right? You read Foundation if you can stay awake.
It's wickedly good in places.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Maybe I'll do one more. And otherwise I can just rattle off a few. The advantage of not bringing them in is I wasn't limited by the stack. But I would say, let's see. Well, there's one I want to end on, which I think you and I will share this one. But I think the last one I'll throw out I'll just throw this one out there because again, so many people know this story. They quote it all the time.
Okay.
I don't know how many people have actually read it. Jurassic Park.
Yes.
What a great, Michael Crichton's 1990 amazing science. I'll call it a sci-fi scientific thriller. And we've made many mention of that show. Michael Crichton, if you like his work, one of the consistent throughputs of it is how much plausible or real science and technology of the time it was written is present in the book, and then using that as a beautiful premise to wrap around these pushing things. Genetic cloning is starting to come up. Let's push that to the max and bring dinosaurs back.
Yes.
And then watch what happens when you get answered the question, what could go wrong?
Right.
But the movie, great standalone film, the original film. However, nothing compared to the book. And I think I've talked about this before. I first read this book when I was in 5th grade.
Right.
Because that was a deal I had made with my mother of I wanted to see the movie.
I remember, you saying,
And I remember it was one of those things where, as how are you, 10 or something in 5th grade?
See, this is what differentiates us. I went with my wife to the opening night.
I was a little kid, but I read this book. I picked up this book, and it was intimidating because it was like a thick novel for a fifth grader.
Yeah.
And I was reading through this, and instantly was like, I shouldn't be reading this. This is amazing.
Right.
And I've read that book
so I've got to ask you then, did you ever, as a kid, did you ever feel guilty for reading stuff that was so good? Because I
felt sneaky about it.
Yeah, because
I don't know if I would say guilty.
Yeah,
because I didn't do anything without, like, I guess, permission.
Right. But I don't think this was my parents. I don't know where it came from, but I definitely had the sense that if I was enjoying a book too much, I probably shouldn't be reading it.
Which is the exact opposite. Like,
right.
And that's the thing, right? And for me, and this is one thing too, where I'm like, I know with even my own children, I got my son into audiobooks because it was one of these. However you get to these stories, I think is what's in power. But yeah, Jurassic Park. That's talk about a great story. It still holds up to this day. And again, it's still as contextually relevant to the conversations we're having right now about.
And of course, the secret of Michael Crichton was he looked at things through a social lens.
Yeah.
And these weren't just stories about technology and science. These were stories about what should we be doing or shouldn't we be doing as a society? How do we make these decisions? What are the consequences of bad decisions?
Yeah.
So for anybody that studies technology in the future, these are like gold dust.
Oh, they're amazing. And I mean, in the human hubris of like, well, we'll just control that with technology. We'll control nature with technology.
Right.
Which, you know, it always, there's a line here. I grabbed it from the book and because it sets up this premise of, we bring back dinosaurs and then it says, until something goes wrong.
Right.
Right. Like, yeah, that's the way of putting, but it is, I mean, it's like the movie, if you enjoy the movie, that is like the most simplistic, childish way of showing what happens when dinosaurs run amok. I mean, if they made a true adaptation, this would be a very different film.
It would, yes, yeah. And of course, we're recording this just before the latest Jurassic World comes out, which I am dreading.
I'm gonna go see it because I'm curious, but I mean, the film franchise kind of, for me, lost it after. I mean, after the first one, they kind of lost it.
Right.
But I'm like, what I don't appreciate is with that film series, and maybe the last one, we'll see, but it's gone the genre of horror. It's become a horror movie franchise. And I'm like, no. I mean,
and it's shallow. It's sort of, everything is for kicks and for the immediate reaction response rather than any deeper narrative underneath.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I don't know. It may turn out to be brilliant.
We'll see. Maybe we'll stand corrected. On the beach, we'll go, you know what? That was right. That was a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I've got so many other things on here.
But okay, yeah.
I'll rattle them off.
Okay.
Good Omens.
Oh, yeah, of course. Terry Pratchett.
Neil Gaiman.
I was so tempted to bring a Terry Pratchett.
But I went with that one because it's very accessible.
Yes.
Great, phenomenal story, and a pretty decent adaptation.
Yes.
I mean, it's the adaptation by itself. Fun because of anything with David Tennant in it. I'm always
and they were smart enough to actually make it stand on its own,
its own thing. I put that one in there, and then one of the things, of course, I don't think I have to say this because I use this book. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Of course.
Right? So not just the book. Yeah. So the book itself, the audio book narrated by Stephen Fry.
Right, yes.
Oh, that's just ear candy. I enjoy it. But this is also a book that I come back to all the time. Yeah. I don't know if I can check, but I would probably guess that I probably listen to the audiobook of Hitchhikers probably at least 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
I use it oftentimes in between books.
Right.
Because you'll finish a book, especially a good one, and you're not ready to let go of like the characters. And then you want to start a new one. You're like, I don't know. I always return. I'm like, I need something to just free my mind.
But one of the reasons it's so good is, I mean, it's just crazy wild, which is what Adams was aiming for. But the ideas that are folded into that are just profound to the extent I could teach from that book.
Oh, same.
And I could teach everything that is relevant to how we think about society and technology today.
Absolutely. And I feel like, I mean, I think the same as probably for you, I would guess, like the book by itself and what he did, and not just the book. And when I say the book, I mean all that. I mean the radio plays.
So we've got to be very clear here, because we started off with the radio plays, which are the pinnacle. The book doesn't reach the heights of the radio plays. But you had to be there. I suspect if you weren't there listening to them, it's not quite the same. Then you had the BBC TV series, which was phenomenal. You had the stage play, which I never saw. You had the movie remake, which, if you didn't know anything else was great. If you did, it was problematic.
Yeah. Wow. True. Yeah. And exactly. And so those original, it was BBC Radio 4, right? The plays, the original.
Probably Radio 4. Yes, that's the sort of thing they used to play on Radio 4.
But regardless, those original, and that was 1978, 79.
Yeah, sort of mid to late 70s. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But they're phenomenal, and they are available. Even you can find them wherever, but you can actually you can purchase them off of Audible. They've got the radio plays.
Have they really got them on?
And I've bought several versions because they've had other ones that were kind of condensed, and then they had the full original.
You've got to go back to the original ones. I've got the original scripts. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Fantastic. Oh, it's such a wonderful story. It's smart. It's witty. It like the things that just stay with you. And I could go on. I can't even do it justice.
No. But if you want a wry reflection on the current day, it is so true to life.
It doesn't, in my opinion, it's one of those things. It doesn't get better than this because it is, and it holds up. You can read it over and over. And every time you do, there's something more that you catch, which is like something funny. And the characters are so they're so flawed and so delicious in that way.
Plus the fact there are so many iconic things in society now. You talk to almost anybody about the Babel fish.
Oh my goodness. Well, right. I mean, we literally, there was, just when Google just did their big presentation, that's like the live translate. This is something we all want, is to be able to just speak and listen to any language without having to actually, but also what a brilliant plot device to be like.
Plus the fact, I've got to insert this because yes, people sort of read half of it. They say Babel fish, they're sort of in your ear translator, brilliant. If you read or listen to the original radio series, Douglas Adams said this was the cause of more wars in the universe than anything else.
That's right.
Because when it comes to diplomacy, whereas before you could use lack of understanding as something to sort of smooth the waves, as soon as everybody knew exactly what everybody else was saying,
there's no more miscommunication. Yeah, right. Well, and oh god, there's so many things. Like, I mean, even just these little phrases. I don't have the exact quote, so I'll probably butcher it now. But it's like, these little humans that were preoccupied with little green pieces of paper, which was the result of many people being unhappy.
Yes.
And it's like, just these little nuggets where you're like, so true.
Yep.
So true.
Yep. So we should probably come back to this. Otherwise, we're going to sort of go on for another hour.
Yeah. Well, I'll stop there. Let me see if I have anything else in there. I think that's it.
Yeah. That was a great list, and I'm so glad that your list complimented mine.
Good.
I seriously had no idea going.
I went for fun. And my whole point is like summer reading lists should be fun. Yes. And there's many. We should do this every year. We should do a nice reading list. Yeah. And also we'll throw it out to our audience. If you have a book that you were expecting to be on our list that's not, let us know. Let us know. Get a hold of us. You can reach us at hello@modemfutura.com, or you can find us on social media. Leave a rating and a review. Chime in, throw in your book. Give us a 5-star rating in whatever book you think we should read.
What a great idea. Yes. Or actually, it might be a 3-star rating because we didn't mention it. But put your book in anyway.
Yeah, put your book in anyway. Let us know because I think it'd be fantastic. Yep. But what a fun way to
that was great. That was 30 minutes in Modem Futura time. I think close to 50 minutes in real time.
That's right. We operate with time dilation in that sense. Well, Andrew, thank you. And like I said, I will pad the show notes with links to all of these books. So you can grab along and have a listen and enjoy hopefully you can enjoy some of your summertime.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like. And
we'll see you next time.
We'll see you on the next episode of Modem Futura. Let me check this out. End with some real summer vibes.
End transmission.